I am delighted to be opening this fifth session, our second to last session on the environment and sustainable development. Today's session is on digital and sustainable development. I would like to welcome everybody and all of our partners in this cycle. Today, we will be talking about digital and sustainable development with a broader panel of experts. The session has been coordinated by ICOM Arab and its president, Ech Cherki Dahmali, and I would like to thank him especially. This evening will be translated into the 3 ICOM languages, French, English, and Spanish. Please do choose the correct interpreting channel. I would like to thank our interpreters and the team at ICOM France, including Anne-Claude and others. Without further ado, I would like to hand straight over to dear Ech Cherki.
Welcome, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to all friends and colleagues around the world. We are very pleased to welcome you to this fifth session of the webinar series that we are organizing with our colleagues from many ICOM committees and other universities around the world. So this theme for this fifth session, it will be about digital and sustainability or digital and sustainable development, especially in the museum field. And today we are very happy to receive 5 speakers. It will be Mr. Emmanuel Château-Dutier, a professor of digital museology at the University of Montreal in Canada. Ms. Amarílis Lage, exhibitions and content coordinator in the Museum of Tomorrow in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. And we will have also our colleague from Egypt, Mohamed Ismail, lecturer of Archaeological and Heritage Information System in the Faculty of Archaeology in Ain Shams in Egypt. And also we will have Sophie, Biecheler, and Olivier Bielecki. They are from the Universcience in Paris. And at the end, we will have our colleague from Finland, Johanna Eiramo, director of the Digital National Gallery Program from the National Finnish Gallery. So as not to lose a lot of time, because we have 5 speakers, and we will let for each speaker 10 minutes to speak about their subject, and then at the end of this session we will have a session for discussion and responding in some questions of the audience. So the first speaker, as I said, it will be Emmanuel Château-Dutier. Emmanuel Château-Dutier is an architectural historian and associate professor of digital museology, which is very good. It's the first time that I heard about this function, which is digital museology. It's very interesting. At the University of Montreal, his work also focused on museology in the history of digital art, and also he was involved in several major programs like a collective art, historical art research projects that make digital art central for the thinkings, and he's responsible for many other projects. For example, the digital editor of the critical edition of Cours d'Antoine, and I have here many other projects, and so as not to take a lot of time from his presentation, I want just to add that he will present today a digital technology in its environmental impact. This is a very important topic, and also he will speak about museums and the adoption of disseminating ecology, and also the 2 possible paths of digital equity and sobriety. So Mr. Emmanuel Château, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers for this invitation. This is a topic that I'm really interested in, that I have worked on in the past as I work in digital museology. I'm not the only person to work on this field. There's a professor in Lausanne in Switzerland who works in this field as well. And I think there are going to be more and more of us looking into this issue. We have heard more considerable impacts of digital in recent years, particularly in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, which is around the equivalent of air travel. This is increasing. The Paris Agreement allowed for a reduction of 7% in greenhouse gas emissions. But in France, we can see that this is generally linked to materials renewal and production. And digital, it's not the use, but it's the quantity of hardware produced in production. And there will be ecological consequences of our digital activities. These activities are very directly linked to physical consultations with technical realities that are not without consequence if we are looking to be environmentally responsible. Some new technologies such as 5G or the blockchain very directly raise the question of energy consumption and its application in the cultural field. And beyond this, digital technologies in museums are rapidly becoming obsolete. Adopting a more global and overview approach, we can see museum institutions on the basis of their size, geographical location, and there's a real ecosystem of performance that needs to be broken down today and perhaps rebuilt. As Bruno Latour suggested in the middle of the COVID pandemic, this is perhaps the time to make an inventory of what we are attached to and what we are ready to let go of. We wanted a landing policy, and to this end, along with a number of colleagues in the Origin Lab, we should be renouncing an obsolete future, saying that we're not going to have any other choice than to manage this heritage without casting aside issues of democracy. We need to have innovation, and we need to develop an art of dismantling. This is a relatively radical program. We need to think that the current digital policy is not viable, and we need to ask ourselves whether this strategy could be applied to digital activities in museums. I'm going to try to speak a little bit more slowly. For many years, this has been indissociable with sustainability in a broader sense. For many years, we've been looking at digitizing collections, which has a lot of responsibilities. A lot of things have become digital since 2003, as UNESCO reminds us, but this is not without problems. The term preservation has been devalued in terms of digital preservation now. Long-term preservation requires an active attitude and an iterative strategy. We need to be taking care of our collections. We have noted that heritage institutions often underinvest in digital technologies. This means that mediation approaches can sometimes be impacted. Perhaps our solutions are more trend-based rather than use-based, and there's not necessarily sufficient sustainability. This reminds me of Jacob Wong in Copenhagen in 2018, who mentioned the need for more flexible solutions, the ability to reuse content in order to avoid loss of energy, and the continuous development of websites. This means focusing more specifically on a certain number of commitments in order to produce good websites rather than just multiple initiatives. There are two problems here, not necessarily only in digital. There's a matter of digital maintenance, particularly in its intangible nature, and also technological issues. There are costs associated, technical and economic and ecological costs. reducing energy use and energy waste associated with operating costs is a real issue for museums. This has been true for a long time, as the Manual of Digital Planning, Museum Planning, dedicates a whole chapter to this. So should we be dismantling a number of museums have already identified maintenance and renewal of digital technologies in order to reduce their environmental footprint? Should we be dismantling our online presence? We need to be thinking about a number of retroactive cycles. Perhaps the answer won't be the same everywhere. Since COVID, there has been a reliance on websites for maintaining operations. So in London, for instance, the strategic plan of a museum recently mentioned that a virtual tour of its museum could be a substitute for populations unable to visit the museum across the world. And during the pandemic, when a number of institutions were forced to close, it was an alternative. And in recent years, we've seen this across all different cultural fields. So all heritage institutes do not have the same ability to deploy this technology. It's sometimes costly. It depends on their size and their organization. And within this context, we think it's crucial for the existence of these institutions. How can we meet and close the gap between these different institutions in terms of their digital capacities? We're going to need greater digital sobriety. I'd like to mention two notions here that I think are interesting: minimum computing and low tech. And I think that this could inspire new digital approaches within the museum sector. Alex Giel from Columbia University in 2015 introduced this for an initiative called Global Outlook for Digital Humanities. Minimal computing is about looking at what we actually need in order to carry out a project with a needs-based architecture. Envisaging IT as a limited resource for software, education, and energy, I think it's an interesting approach because it encourages critical thinking. It's a critical movement, partially environmental, requiring a balance to be struck between gains and costs in terms of using different technologies, including social justice and reuse and maintenance. Some principles around minimal computing include minimal design, minimal maintenance, and also minimal obsolescence, and maximum justice, with the idea of reducing barriers to entry and increasing self-representation and access within IT. This is a premise of social justice and IT that's based on the principles of fairness, diversity, and sharing. It's an approach that proposes changing the GAFAM's approaches and their user-friendly interface with a technical sobriety and ease, focusing on a more appropriate and easier to use software. Low tech contrasts with high tech, and there's an increasing complexification of technology in order to fight against the monopoly that certain companies have in the production and the distribution and control of content. It's an approach that shows us the need to invest in manageable technology. Technology in low tech is easily accessible, and also shows the interest for sobriety. I think that we need to, instead of just having dismantling, we need to be designing simple and easily manageable and easily usable technologies within a rationale of openness. This means that we need to rethink development between institution with collaboration in order to have a healthier and shared ecosystem founded on open technology that can be easily managed. There's two reasons for this. This would help us to discuss objectives of emancipation through open source technology, and also helps us to meet environmental needs. Thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you for keeping time.
Because I told them in the beginning that I will speak in English. So thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting indeed, because I love the idea about mixing between the digital tools and the ethical issues and social issues, which is the digital equity between museums and also the social responsibility of museums who are using these digital tools, and especially about measuring the ecological impact of using of digital tools in the environment. I'm sure that there will be some question according to your speech. So as not to lose that time, I will go now to our second speaker. She's Miss Amarílis Lage from the Museum of Tomorrow in Rio de Janeiro. Amarílis Lage is a journalist, a specialist in creative writing, and she has a master's degree in linguistics, and also she is a PhD candidate in the same field. And also she is exhibition and content coordinator at the Museum of Tomorrow in Rio de Janeiro. And also, the most traditional prestigious literary prize in Brazil was gained by her with the book Manual de L'Inovações, I think, which was based on the museum exhibition. So her presentation will be about the virtual exhibition that they organized in the Museum of Tomorrow, and about what is going on the Amazon rainforest. So I will give her the floor so as to speak about this project.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Can you listen to me? Is that okay? Yes.
Yes.
Buenos dias, bonjour. I'm going to speak in English. And first of all, let me just say how grateful I am for this opportunity. It's such a pleasure being able to listen to all of you and share part of our experience here at the Museum of Tomorrow. My name is Amarílis. I'm the Exhibitions and Content Coordinator of the museum, which is this very beautiful building. You can see we are in Rio de Janeiro. We are a quite new museum. We opened our doors in 2015. Next slide, please. And in this 9 years, almost 9 years, we became one of the most visited museums in Brazil. We are expecting 6 million visitors next month. And there's some information about this that I would love to share with you, because I think it's really relevant for what I'm going to share with you in this presentation. So we are one of the most visited museums in Brazil, and 40% of our visitors have our non-regular museums audience. And moreover, 22% of them never have visited a museum before. So I want you to have this context in mind, because we are talking about Rio de Janeiro. And in Brazil, most of our museums are in big cities such as Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo. So we live in a society in which people do not have that access to a museum and the kind of debate we want to promote and the kind of content that we want to create. So these are very important informations to keep in mind. And here we are very focused on the Anthropocene, which is the main topic of our main exhibition. And having this opportunity to speak to so much people here in Brazil is something that really pleases us, because it gives us the opportunity to raise awareness of Anthropocene and climate change to a really, really broader audience. Next, please. So besides talking about climate change and Anthropocene and all its consequences and cause in our main exhibition, we also have some temporary exhibitions, and I'm going to talk to you about one of them, which is Fruturos. Fruturos is a neologism. It's a mix of fruits and futures, and it's about the Amazon region. We had this exhibition here in the museum for a period of 6 months, and it was a huge success. We have many visitors, as you can see. And we had this research during this exhibition in which we asked our visitors if they did learn something new about the Amazon region during their visits, and 90% of them said yes. And it's really interesting because I'm not sure if you are aware of that, but here in Brazil, because we are such a big country, people who lives in Rio de Janeiro or São Paulo, most of them never went to the Amazon rainforest. So we don't know anything about its biodiversity, about its people, cultural heritage, and so on. So many of the things you do know about this area comes from the news. And of course, most of them are related to deforestation and so on. So we were very happy with the results of our exhibition. However, once it was finished, we asked ourselves, what now? Because it's such an important topic for us to discuss as society, how important the Amazon rainforest is, not just for us as a country, but globally, its impact. Sorry, I was just listening to a message here in the chat. And we felt like it was our responsibility to make sure that as many people as we can have access to this kind of debate, to this kind of information that we were able to bring together in this exhibition. Next, please. So once we finished this exhibition, we created a special website for it. Usually what we do have regularly is having a landing page for temporary exhibitions, but for this one, we really created a special project, and in order to keep this debate alive. And I'm not sure if you are aware of this, but right now we are facing a historic drought in Amazon, and one of these main rivers, which is Negro Rivers, is on its lowest level ever. Therefore, we really feel like we have this responsibility as an institution to make sure that we are making whatever effort we can to bring this kind of information and keep this debate alive. So we create this website, and we asked ourselves what kind of content we are going to share with our online visitors. So next, please. We have a virtual tour, and our visitor can have an idea of how the exhibition was. It's the small image on their left, so they can see the areas in which talk about Amazon biodiversity, indigenous people, traditional knowledge, bioeconomy, and what are the perspectives for the future that people in Amazon region have, teachers, artists, activists, and so on. But we also created new content, extra content for this website. So we added some videos with interviews, some infographics, and especially we created some material, especially for teachers and students. And we did that because we do understand that it's very important to bring this subject for the new generations. And we are also aware that for many students in public schools in Brazil, it's so hard for them to have access to internet. So if we just create a website and thinking that this is going to address the social gap we have here in Brazil, we face a new social gap, which is access to internet. So we create this project in which the teachers can print this material, and by doing this, share with its students, his or her students, this information about Amazon biodiversity, about its how people, about some cultural aspects such as music, literature, which is something that we don't usually think about when we think about Amazon, about how rich and important and relevant it is when it comes to culture aspects as well. And this is the kind of thinking that led us to this project as it is right now. And so far, we have 40,000 visitors to this website. And it is an experience I'd like to share with you, because I think that maybe for many of you, it's something you ask yourselves as well. How can we reach a broader audience and keep this kind of content alive once we finish an exhibition, in order to stimulate this democratic and broader debate on the subjects that matters the most for us. So next, please. I'd like to thank you again. And here is a link for this website in case you feel curious about it. And here's my email, so please don't hesitate on writing me if you have any questions or any kind of information I'd like to share about a project like this. And thank you. Thanks so much.
Muito obrigado. Thank you, Amarílis, for your presentation. I hope that your exhibition in the virtual version was a democratic way to reach many visitors for your exhibition. And at the end, I hope that you will have some question, especially about if you have any statistics about how many visitors you got in the virtual version and what was the impact of this version on your museum. So the third speaker will be Dr. Mohamed Ismail. He's a lecturer of Archaeological and Heritage Information System of the Faculty of Archaeology in Ain Shams in Egypt. He is a PhD holder in Heritage and Museum Studies with a thesis entitled Virtual Egypt Re-exhibiting Egyptian Heritage. He got also a master's degree in Cultural Heritage Management from Université Paris Premier Panthéon Sorbonne, with a thesis entitled The Use of Augmented Reality in Egyptian Museums. He has also 24 years of experience working in the field of digital technologies in cultural heritage and museums, and he participated in many projects, and he is also a member of ICOM Egypt, the National Committee, and the International Committee of AVICOM. His presentation today will be about the digital uses in Egypt archaeology museums and the use of extended reality at the Children's Museum as an example. So, Mr. Ismail, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am delighted for this kind of invitation and glad to be here at this important discussion. I would like to share with you some of digital solutions that have been implemented in the Egyptian museums. In 2000, Egypt established the Center for Documentation of Cultural and Natural Heritage. We call it CULTNAT, confirming its role in the field of digital heritage. Since then, many solutions have been created in Egyptian museums to disseminate the heritage knowledge. These solutions include multimedia applications, websites, virtual reality and augmented reality applications, display system, etc. Next, please. One of these solutions is Culturama or Cultural Panorama. It is a patented interactive panoramic display system. This system has been installed or built in some cultural institutions and museums in Egypt, such as Bibliotheca Alexandrina and the National Military Museum in Cairo. Another example is a hologram of Tutankhamun mask. The virtual mask of the King Tutankhamun was displayed in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo when the original mask was in the restoration lab. Another example is the holographic display was produced in the Museum of Islamic Art to present two artifacts that no longer exist in the display. The system was awarded the gold prize from ICOM committee as the best creative exhibition in installation in 2019. Another solution was created for the tomb of Tutu and his wife. This tomb was discovered in Sohag, was transported to the capital's museum, or Egypt's capital museum. I'm sorry, it is now part of the museum display. Given it is very small, it is not possible for the visitors to enter the tomb for preservation concerns. So it was proposed to create an interactive application using a virtual reality headset to allow visitors to see the features of the tomb from the inside. Next, please. Another example of the use of extended reality concept in Egyptian museums is the Dinosaur Park exhibition. It was held at the Children's Museum. A number of applications were developed to introduce museum visitors to the world of dinosaurs in an attractive and enjoyable way. The exhibition featured a variety of techniques, including 360-degree videos. Two films were produced, each lasting 60 seconds, 3D animation and 3D printing, a holographic display for the dinosaur embryo. Through the mixed reality experience, the visitor could use the headset, watching the dinosaurs move in the museum garden. Next, please. Another example is the Digital Heritage Hall in the Za'afran Museum. The museum is located in the main campus of Ain Shams University in Cairo. It is housed within the Za'afran Palace, one of the Egypt's modern era historic buildings. The museum inaugurated in May of this year. It is an educational museum that mainly targets university students, researchers, and scholars in the field of museums and heritage. It is also open to the public. As a virtual museum, a digital heritage exhibition has been established within the museum. The concept of this virtual museum is to showcase topics from Egyptian heritage, utilizing various technologies and systems. These systems function as a permanent infrastructure, allowing museum staff to update and edit content to change the theme of the exhibition. The hall offers a variety of experiences, including an interactive printed map with NFC markers or pins on the locations of the World Heritage Sites in Egypt. The visitors may visit the sites virtually by using the NFC capability on his or her smartphones by swiping the smartphone close to the NFC pins or ships. The second experience is a tablet with 2 installed augmented reality applications. Visitors may use the first application to read a papyrus from ancient Egypt, and the second app for an audio explanation of certain inscriptions. We applied on Tutankhamun burial chamber. VR applications using headset that allows users to tour places of historical significance. We have now 2 applications. The first one is a virtual visit to Tutankhamun tomb, and the other one, developed by our students, is a virtual tour of Nefertari tomb. Visitors can also explore multimedia content through 2 interactive kiosk stations, access additional information about the collections or related topics. The floor also has been used to exhibit floor plans for some archaeological sites. It gives users the option to use their smartphone to visit the actual location by scanning the QR codes located on the floor plan. Visitors who are blind can interact with a 3D printed replica of dedicated blind kiosk, which also has a braille label as well as headphones for audio interpretation. The last experience is an interactive hologram displaying a number of Egyptian artifacts. Visitors or students can choose one of the cards, each of which represents an individual artifact, and sit on a rotating table to display the artifact and give them the opportunity to view it from different angles in an interactive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail, for your presentation and for this wonderful work. So I hope that you will continue with another research about what is the ecological impact of the use of these digital tools, and also what is the energy bill for museum. Did the museum's budget was capable of supporting this kind of digital tools, and so as to make it as a sustainable solution for museums. So now we are going to our fourth speaker, which are Sophie Biecheler, from Director of Institutional and International Relations at Universcience, and her colleague Olivier Bielecki, Director of IT at the same institution. Sophie Biecheler is a member of board of ICOM France, and she is a Director of Institutional and International Relations at Universcience. And Universcience is a state-owned institution which have also Cité des Sciences et Palais de la Découverte. Sophie has over 20 years experience in the world of culture, in human and international relations, and she worked in various cultural and museum structure. She has been a member of the ICTOP, the board, and also participant in the work of SIMUZ group. Olivier Bielecki is a Director of Information System at Universcience. He has also worked in a number of public cultural establishments, including Centre Georges Pompidou, and now he's working in the Cité des Sciences et de l'Industrie in Paris. So, Sophie and Olivier, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to come and talk with you and to learn from you. Congratulations on this excellent webinar idea. This is a really brilliant to have an international panorama. And so we're really delighted to talk to you about what Universcience is doing in terms of sustainable development. So Universcience is 2 physical spaces in Paris, the Palais de la Découverte and the Cité des Sciences. And then there's also the blog.fr, which is the a digital environment, digital space. And we have 3 million visitors in our physical sites every year, and we have exhibitions focused on science, human sciences, social sciences, society sciences, sciences of society, fundamental sciences. Universcience is really focused in on sustainability. We've had the opportunity to speak in a previous webinar, and one of our goals and key focuses is sustainable development. Sustainable development can be found in our programs, in our exhibitions, in the eco-design approach to our exhibitions. We think about how we can develop exhibitions that emit less CO2, exhibitions that are reused. We want them to be recycled. And we think this is something that's important. We're working hard at the whole sustainable aspect of our exhibitions. We've currently got an exhibition on the climate emergency in our permanent exhibition area, and this seeks to raise awareness of visitors about the current situation and encourages visitors to engage in the ecological transition. We also have a number of different actions focused on improving consumption, lowering consumption, particularly during festivals. We have a scientific festival, we have a convention center in our site, and we are committed to being certified for a low carbon approach. And then, of course, in terms of mobility and transport of our visitors, this is something that's also important. We're working hard on that as well. In terms of a responsible digital approach, that is also important. Digital technology plays a key role at Universcience because unlike other museums, including other museums here, we are not a museum based on collections. We are a science grouping, and we have a number of different presentation settings, which are often digital. What we're seeking to do then is to maintain this development in a responsible way and making sure that we have a low carbon approach. And that's why Olivier, who is the IT systems director at Universcience, and he's just going to illustrate some of the actions that we've carried out and talk to you a little bit about that and talk about the questions that we've thought about. Thank you very much, Sophie. Yes, I want to talk about the certification process that we're involved in. First of all, I'd like to talk about the responsible digital certification that we're signing up for. This is being run by an association put in place by in 2018, together with the WWF and the Ministry of the Ecological Transition. There are 4 key areas in breaks down into 14 different criteria. This is we are focusing on the 2021 version, which is for public institutions. The 4 areas is to cover, first of all, governance. So the goal is to involve the senior management and to define the action plan. The second area of the certification is to do with support. This responsible digital approach needs to be carried out together with our stakeholders, our staff and our visitors, our suppliers, communicate around this approach, raise awareness of staff in terms of responsible digital approaches. The third aspect is to do with digital technologies. This is the key and central aspect. We want to adopt a responsible approach for managing equipment and software. And the fourth area is about expanding this responsible digital approach, and we seek to do this with our staff and also with our visitors in involving them in the approach, and so that they're not just spectators, as it were, of the approach. So the goal of this certification is focused around a 3-year action plan. We have made 41 commitments that we've identified, and we've given each of them indicators which will make it possible for us to track the implementation of the actions. And the goal, as Sophie said, is to reduce CO2 emissions produced by digital technology. That's the goal of this responsible digitalization certification. We're going to have an audit after 1.5 years, and then at the end of the 3-year period, in order to check that we're on track. So we are the first cultural institution to have received this certification, and it's attributed to the whole of the institution. It applies to our internal management systems, but also everything linked into our cultural and scientific offerings, the exhibitions, the lectures, and everything that happens within the museum. So the goal of this certification was really backed by the whole management team. It's involved everyone, so that we could end up with something that was really very effective. Now I want to just give you a few very specific examples of what we mean in terms of this responsible digital approach. First of all, if we think about the area 3, about the life cycle and digital services, so this is about equipment and software, and there's an action principle which seeks to promote low consumption and prolonging the life of equipment from purchase. So this is thinking about the whole life cycle of this equipment. So for the purchasing phase, we are aiming to ensure that 100% of our equipment includes social and environmental clauses from 2024. That's something that's very ambitious. We already are at 67% of our procedures that are around that at the end of the second quarter of 2023. So we're well on the way. Life cycle is also about replacing our equipment, and our replacement policy has up until now been a case of buying it and then replacing it after a 5-year period once it's been paid for. But now we want to think about the change of activities of a staff member. If a member of staff has the same needs as they had before, then they will continue to use the same piece of equipment to do their work. And so in this way, we're managing to prolong the life of our equipment, and we can stretch it up to now 7 or 8 years for our office equipment. And when we've finished using the equipment for professional users, because it is no longer up to the technical level required, first of all, we offer them free of charge to our staff. We've already organized 2 campaigns. We've given 140 screens and a number of other PC solutions. At the end of October, there'll also be a 3rd campaign, and we're going to give 150 PCs with screens to our staff. So the equipment that is no longer used internally gets a second life in the domestic setting of our staff. And then we're also talking with associations involved in the social life of our country. We're talking about Emmaus, Connect, in order to be able to donate equipment that's no longer used. So I said that this approach applies to the whole of the institution, and our exhibitions include thinking about the digital aspect and also the availability of equipment, because we are now studying the possibility of reusing equipment that was purchased for previous exhibitions that are no longer being presented in the institution. So we are seeking to reuse equipment. In terms of software, the applications that we develop take into account from the specification level, the eco-design aspects. So this means that we are rebuilding our websites, and as we do so, it needs to be aligned with a set of standards put in place by the ministry, which applies to public institutions. This is the general eco-design approach, and they need to be designed, and one of the speakers has already talked about this. they need to be this website needs to be able to be used by older equipment. We're not in this race for higher quality equipment. We want to have a low-tech approach so that our websites can be used by as many people as possible without having to purchase new equipment. Again, we're trying to extend the life of our equipment. Once again, the content is designed to be responsible from a digital perspective. So we ask ourselves about whether we need to put images and videos on all pages, and also we consider the level of quality that's necessary. Could we use a lower quality for the same surface? And this would reduce the size of files. In terms of the second area for this strategy, we are suggesting putting in place events to raise awareness of different stakeholders. We're going to create a space dedicated to responsible digital approach to explain where we're up to and how we're progressing, but also communicate with the staff. We're 4 times a year. We're also organizing events that connect into this idea of the Cyber Cleanup Day, which you probably know about. So at every season change, we invite our staff to clean up their storage spaces. And so there are 4 seasons, and we have 4 storage areas. There's the personal storage space on OneDrive, messages. We also use Teams where files are also stored. So we're encouraging people to go through these different areas and to clean them up as much as possible. And so we develop workshops where we present the tools and we talk about how this, and we talk about methodologies for managing data to avoid doing constant redundant sort of up to 10 times saves and storage of these different files, and in order to just be more efficient. We have a whole number of different other ways that we're trying to put in place in order to improve the life cycle of our equipment. We've got a great deal of equipment for our staff and also on the exhibition spaces, and so it's important to properly understand them and have processes for managing them that are common to us all. Currently, we are giving away and donating the equipment used by our staff, but in the future we could perhaps apply this to exhibition equipment. This could be done to our staff, donated to our staff, but also to associations. We're also seeking to put in place repair systems. So you can see that the whole certification approach is really very ambitious and has caused us to ask a whole number of questions and think about a whole different level of constraints. But this is what's important in order to reduce our CO2 emissions linked to digital technologies.
Thank you, dear colleague, for your presentation. It was really very interesting, especially for the response looking for the reducing the CO emission, and also congratulations on your labeling system, which is responsible digital responsibility. And it was very interesting to hear that we can apply this kind of label in museum sectors. I only know this procedure are in big companies, big economic companies. I am very pleased to hear that it can be applied also in museum sector. Thank you for your presentation. Now our last speaker is our colleague Johanna Eiramo. She is the director of the Digital National Gallery program in the Finnish National Gallery. Johanna is an MA New York from New York University. She is the director of the Digital Finnish National Gallery program. And also, she has worked to support and further enhance the internationalization to Finnish companies and economic region as a communication professional. Before her current position, Mr. Johanna worked at as the head of communication at Antun Art Museum, which is a part of the Finnish National Gallery. Her presentation, it will be about the Finnish Gallery and the Green Handprint program. So, Ms. Johanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. And let me say that I just got here in time. There's been some trouble. So 5 minutes before the speech, I'm available for it. So thank you for acknowledging this travel time. So yes, my name is Johanna Eiramo, and I come from the Finnish National Gallery. So Helsinki says hello. My gallery represents or has 3 physical museums, and of course storage space. We have about an art collection of about 60,000 artworks and related archival materials, just to give you a scope of the organization that I work for. About 75% of our collections have been digitized to some extent. Some have been digitized in the 1980s, so old-fashioned stuff, and we continue and try to get closer to 100 as best we can. Now, the digital program that I represent was started in June 22 and will last until the end of 2024, and I will tell a little bit more about that at the very end of my presentation. In 2019, reacting to the quite stark figures of the ecological crisis worldwide, the staff of the Finnish National Gallery initiated a discussion about the ecological footprint, the CO2 footprint of the work that we do. And while we realize that some of the work that we can do is not on the big scale, very big, very big footprints on the large scale, we felt it was very important that we do something for the planet. So if I could have slide 2, please. The first step was to understand the scope of our CO2 emissions. And now anyone who has tried to do this, and I don't know if my colleagues have discussed this before, but it is really difficult to do this calculation. There is no easy solution as to what to include and what to exclude from the numbers. So our calculations in these numbers include the 3 museums and our administrative offices, but it does not include our collections storage spaces. The utility cost of the museums and the offices is our biggest source of CO2 emissions. So this is where we began. We measured this in 2019 to the best that we could. And we now know that in that year, we emitted 1,471,048 kilograms of CO2 equivalent. And so that is the reference for our future, for the work that we wanted to do from there on. And energy, specifically electricity, is our biggest source of CO2. So by changing the source of the electricity to wind energy, we were able to lower the CO2 levels by 1 million CO2 kilos of equivalent per year. So that was a big change. So you can see the change from 2019 to 2020. We've also had some panels installed on the floor of the Atheneum Museum in 22, and this has brought the figure down a little bit more, so we can provide some of our own energy that we need. From the pie chart, you can also see that personnel traveling is about 5.5% of our emissions. Artworks traveling is about 2%, and waste disposal is about 2% of our emissions. And with this knowledge, the staff and the management of the Finnish National Gallery were committed to making some operational changes so that we are planning to be carbon neutral by 2035. We have taken on an eco-compass environmental management system to help us figure out or evaluate how we're doing as we're going forward to CO2 neutrality. Some of the biggest things that we've done is we have this green handprint program. We wanted to give our program a positive name. A footprint tends to stamp down things, and we wanted to have a green handprint showing that we are doing things. And it is one of our 3 strategic goals for all of the National Gallery on this strategic timeline that we are now up until 2027. We are committed to reducing the emissions caused by transportation 10% year on year. The staff of the Finnish National Gallery are no longer allowed to fly inside Finland. So you need to go places in Finland for work. You take a train or you take a boat, usually a train or a bus. We also recognize and annually celebrate the green achievements that F&G employees have done. So we want to celebrate even the smaller victories of doing something green. Other smaller things that are included in the Green Handprint program are favoring vegetarian and local food, reducing the use of plastic, especially bubble wrap and things that we do when we move artworks around. And we have a green handprint sticker that we put on reused materials, so people know that we're not sending B-level materials, but we're actually reusing everything that we can. The transportation of artworks is cooperated with Helsinki metropolitan area museums whenever it is possible. And our curators, when it's possible, choose artworks for loan from nearby the regions instead of far away. And environmental sustainability is also a criterion for the museum shop products. And now moving on to the digital side, if I could get the next slide, please. In 2020, the Green Handprint Task Force joined forces with our IT team to try to calculate the CO2 emissions of our digital services. Now, the pie chart is an indication of the proportions. It is really, really difficult to try to figure out the CO2 emissions of digital products and services. Many device producers do not indicate if their devices are energy efficient or not. And as you will remember, if you think about the scope, so the CO2 emission in 2020 of the whole 3 museums plus offices was down to 417,000 CO2 kilogram equivalent per year. So the 80 to 81,000% is a part of that. And of course, as the previous speakers mentioned, the biggest issue are the equipment, the devices. So computers, phones, printers, routers, headphones, so many electronic equipment that we use. Some of them are hard to reuse, and some of them are hard to dispose of properly. And this is something that we're looking into doing. The digital part of software as a service or cloud computing is approximately 11% of this digital handprint. So not the largest part, by no means not an insignificant thing either. And now to the last page, if I could. So with the support of the knowledge of the 11% of cloud computing and digital software services, we launched the Digital Finnish National Gallery in June 22 to discover and pilot new ways to discover and experience art that is 100% digital. One key premise, I must say, is that we are looking for ways to create digital products and services that are not free of charge. So we are aiming, they don't need to be profitable, but we do need to start covering some costs of the digital products as well. So budgets are not getting bigger, but costs are getting bigger. And the program that I'm leading right now is specifically trying to find new ways to show and experience art that is not on display in the museums. So our products are not alternatives or additions to physical exhibitions, but totally separate products and services that are designed specifically for digital users. We have tried exhibitions in virtual worlds, VR exhibitions, 360-degree exhibitions, and video on demand. And these are all that we have started, and some of them have also already been launched within the last year. And actually, our first VR exhibition about the virtual world of Hugo Simbari is going to be launched next week. It's going to be on Oculus MetaQuest 2s, the headset, and also a desktop version. I'm happy to share any of these links and services that we have to anyone who wants to know, either through ICOM France or LinkedIn or as you will. So yes, that is my portion of this evening about the Green Handprint program of the Finnish National Gallery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johanna, for your presentation, and thank you for showing us the measure that you were using in your institutions to reduce the ecological impact of the use of the digital tools in your institution. It's very impressive, and thank you for the other speakers, because as we can say, digital tools are very, very important in our museums, especially when we are going to face digital natives. So digital natives are our future visitors. So if we say digital natives, it means that we should, and we will be very obliged to use more and more the digital tools to reach this kind of generations of the digital natives, as I said. So I don't know if I have some question for the speakers. I have only one, then I will put mine. So the one I had in the chat box, it's for Mr. Ismail from Miss Isabel. She is talking about what kind of digital solutions you use for the inventory of your collection in your museums. Yeah.
You mean the database system?
Yes, the database system that you are using for the inventory or for documentation of collections.
Yeah, yes. For the data regarding the database systems, we use in most of our museums we use FileMaker, because it is very easy tool for museum staff. They don't have any technical background. They are not programmers or IT persons. That's why we use FileMaker for the most of our museums in Egypt.
Thank you. So for the other question, please use the chat box or raise your hand. I have Mr. Michel Guiraud who wants to intervene. Please give him the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Present yourself before.
Yes. So I'm so until 2020, I was the director of collection of the Natural History Museum in Paris. And so I'm speaking about these kind of museums and these kind of collections. And maybe a question or remark mainly for Emmanuel Château-Dutier. I got what I really like what Olivier said about what they're doing at Universcience, and I think it's very important just to work on the maintenance. But one question is he raised, or it seems that he was talking about the frugality and what to digitize. And one thing I would like to raise, but just as you said, for whom and for what do we make a digitization? Because looking at the research side of it, we digitize many of our collections. We have millions of specimens which are digitized, and in fact, this collection are because they digitize, they can be accessed to a larger community of scientists. and also a large public. And the interest of this digitization is, in fact, what we found when we in fact renovate our herbarium. We digitize the collections, and the question, because in fact we used to receive visitors to use our collections, and the question we asked, should we skip the place to accept visitors because we were digitizing? In fact, what we found, we kept the same space because we found that in fact the visitors had better prepared their visit, and so therefore, having digitized the collection, in fact, we got a better use of our collections. We're using lots of, in fact, putting also together, because the data are based on the FAIR principle, which is find, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And all the museum put the data and image together. So of course, that's huge. That's petabytes of data, petabytes of images. But by putting everything together, in fact, you can use that whole wealth of data, and which means, of course, you can use intelligence, artificial intelligence, to deal with some data and answer some question. And regarding the public, something too that maybe can be applied to any museum is citizen science. By putting that on the web, you can ask people to help you to curate or to even use your collection and give you information, help you. And that's people, like that, people can, in fact, get their own the knowledge of science or things like that. And therefore, the question is, okay, we're using a lot of CO2 to digitize, and we're going to increase this number, the number of petabytes, but look at the benefit. So the cost benefit analysis should be important. So I would like to have the point of view of Emmanuel on that.
So, okay, thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much for the question, Michel. I think this comment is very important. I wasn't recommending that we should stop digitalizing or stop all these operations, but think about for whom and what for. And I think, yes, we need to think about the different audiences. And for science museums, I think the question of the availability of collections for research is really very important. We can also perhaps think about different types of use. Is it worth having full images when we have big corpuses? What's the purpose of that? And then also, when we use artificial intelligence on these different corpuses, is it relevant? We had a colleague in Pittsburgh who said that we could augment the vectors in order to avoid having to keep going back over the same corpus. But you're absolutely right. We need to think in terms of use, and the example that you are mentioning in terms of the availability of digital collections and optimize, which made it possible to optimize the physical use of collections, is very important and very, very relevant. I think also the question of citizen science, that's something that's really important, because this is the heart of the missions of museums, is to make collections available intellectually and physically. If we look at the deontological documents that govern our work, museums have an ethical responsibility for making collections available, and I'm not trying to stop that in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Emmanuel. So really, I have a question for all of the speakers. So as I said, it's very important to use digital tools, but when we push these solutions in our museums and to use them as industrial skill, do you think that museums will not continue to be the traditional museums that we know, and we are going to face virtual museums in the future, and we will have less and less physical visits to our museums? Do you think that these digital tools can have a bad impact on the sense of a traditional museum, and also an impact on the number of visitors, physical visitors that we are receiving? So anyone can respond
if I may.
Yes, Johanna.
I do not see that fear as becoming a reality. Our three museums are doing super well. And I think quite on the opposite side, on the digital realm, we can, and I'm talking about art, obviously, but we don't have to adhere to anything in the physical realm. There is no gravity, there is no oxygen, that we don't have to think about the light that comes on the artworks and it destroys it over time. So we can actually make art live longer. The physical will crumble at some point, but I think we will be able to do new things that are not possible in the physical realm, but the physical museums is still the authentic. I don't think we'll ever lose the yearning to be close to the piece of art that moves our hearts, and or see a piece of something in natural history museums that is close to our hearts. So I don't think they're going to be competitive. I think it's going to be very reasonable for accessibility, for instance, to be able to show things that you can watch on any part of the world at any time of the day. So well, you know, call me Pollyanna, but I think it's going to be a positive, not a negative.
May I go?
Yes.
Another Pollyanna here.
Yes, yes.
Well, I'm not afraid of that as well. And actually, I'd like to talk a little bit about what I was mentioning before. I mean, how many people in Brazil just don't go to museums. And of course, we do have many aspects related to that, such as the fact that the museums are mainly in big cities and so on. We do have an economic aspect we cannot ignore, because even though we have some free visit projects, it's still something expensive for many people, because it does involve, for example, transportation and things like that that we cannot solve for a public. But it's not just that. It's not about the economic aspect. It does have also a psychological aspect to that. So many people in Brazil do feel like museums are not for me. I'm not welcome in this kind of place. I'm not going to understand its content. So I do believe that virtual exhibitions, for example, can help us show to a broader audience what we do and how exciting it can be, and maybe try to melt a little bit this feeling that people are not welcome here. So this is one point. I think that we do have a real opportunity to tell people that usually does not cross our door what we do, what we are trying to say, and why and how. But at the same point, I do believe that when we do this, we must rethink what we do offer to our public once they come here. It cannot be the same thing that they would find in a website. It must be a different experience. So how can we invite people to, once they are here, to have a different experience in which people can meet each other, can interact with each other, can be part of this project? So I think that it does, there's a challenge for us. How can we change what kind of experience we promote once our visitors arrive?
So I put this question because I agree with you that digital tools can help us to reach more and more visitors virtually, but there is a problem in which Mr. Emmanuel talked about, is the equity to the access to the new to digital tools. Did all the museums of the world can afford this kind of technologies? That's the main problem. It's the equity to the access to this kind of technologies. Should the big museums who are using these digital tools wait for the others to follow them, or I think that in the future we will have a big gap between museums in the use of digital tools. That's why I put this question. Anyone, or I will go to the next question, is in the chat. I think it's about si on accès fait mon visite. Nadia, she is speaking about how we can create a virtual museum, and also it is in French, that the virtual museums, virtual visits can have a bad impact of the incomes of museums. Yes, we have also Mu'taz Osman. He want to put a question. Mu'taz, please, and present yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Dahmali. This is Mu'taz Osman from United Arab Emirates from Dubai. Thank you, sir, for this great seminar, and a big thank to all our speakers today, as it's really a great information. And my question is actually a request to you, Dr. Dahmali, as we want more like this kind of a great seminar. Actually, we learn from each other and we share all the knowledge between us around the world. For example, if we can choose one of the seminar, like what is the new challenge to our museum and how it's being solved, and or how we can solve it. I think this is what we need, because today we talk a lot about, the positive thing. This is very great thing, but let us also to take a benefit from all these great people around us here, to learn more, because really we have, let us to say it, we have a lot of a challenge, new challenge is coming to our museum. Thank you again, Dr. Dahmali, for this great, and thank you for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Osman. I take note of your proposition, and maybe in our next webinars, maybe we can include one of your ideas as a topic. So my last impression about this webinar, which is ecological responsible webinar, because we didn't take planes to make this webinar. It's virtually. So I suggest that ICOM France, or all the committees who are in this webinar series, can make a recommendation to ICOM to do two things. One is to create a group which can work on the guidelines for the use of responsible digital tools in museums. In these guidelines can be published in the future, in 2 or 3 years, because the digital responsibilities of museum is included in the strategic plan of ICOM. The second thing, why not, as our colleagues in Universcience, where not ICOM can create a label of the digital responsibility of museums, and this award can be given each year to a museum in the world according to some criteria, and it will be in a group. So I hope that these two recommendations can be taken into consideration, and I will be very happy to support these recommendations with our colleagues in this webinar series, and to present it to the EB of ICOM. Thank you again, and final thought, our dear speakers, if you have any things to add, or I will give the floor to Emily Girard to conclude this seminar. So nobody, so please, Emily, go ahead.
Thank you, Ech Cherki, for this presentation and what you've been doing. Thank you for all of our speakers who've covered these issues, really very interesting, and opened up some really interesting perspectives for us. A lot of us have been following you today. I think this is a really interesting theme, and I think no one will have been disappointed in terms of what they heard. So really, thank you very much. I just wanted to remind you that the next and final session of this cycle will take place on the 22nd of November at 5:30. It'll be focused on emergency plans and reconstruction. It'll be moderated by our friends from ICTOP, and we're really looking forward to that. And we will see you then. And until then, look after yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you then.